board. I am from Texas. I flew in yesterday, and I'm so excited to be here. And the weather is amazing. It's so hot in Texas, although I was kind of feeling a little bit of the heat just a minute ago. But I have a story as well. I had an unplanned pregnancy when I was 19, and when I found out I was pregnant, I thought my parents were going to disown me, that they were going to I was going to be the black sheep of the family, that it was just going to be totally horrible. All these horrible thoughts go through your head, the worst case scenario that can actually happen. I grew up in a Christian school and had amazing parents, and it's just, I was devastated. And so I told my baby dad, and he felt the same way as well. And he was like, we can't have this baby, even though we knew and grew up knowing abortion was wrong. In fact, I even remember when I was young, I would stand outside abortion clinics with my parents sometimes and pray for life. Like, that's how I grew up knowing it was wrong. But in that moment, when all of your mind is just flooded with every horrible situation that could possibly happen, it becomes a real option. And so we scheduled the abortion appointment, made the abortion appointment, and paid for it, And whenever I went in, I really got in kind of robot mode, like you stuff down all your feelings and emotions, and you're like, everything's okay, it's gonna be fine, I'll just get this abortion and go through the broken heart mess later. I just need to get through this. And so they made Ryan wait out into the waiting room, and I went in by myself, and basically all of those emotions that I stuffed down for about a week and a half during this whole process of getting this thing scheduled, erupted in that room. And I ended up hyperventilating and passing out in the abortion room. And I had a nurse, and this is not a normal story at all, because I hear horror stories, but I had a nurse that she was feeding me, she was giving me a drink of water, I'm like bawling hysterically, and she said, you're too emotionally distraught to make this decision today. You can come back another day, but today you're not getting an abortion. And so I went back out in the waiting room to Ryan. My face was like totally swollen from crying so hard. And I said, we're still pregnant. And so I don't know, it was just kind of one of those things where we looked at each other and just knew this is okay, let's do this. So we went home and we told our parents, and they were very disappointed, but it wasn't as horrible as all of the thoughts that we had thought it would be. And we ended up having like a shotgun wedding. We had already been together for several years. We already knew we wanted to get married. It was just more of the shame. And so we got married. And well, first when we had asked our pastor, the guy that had led Ryan to the Lord years before, we asked him if he would marry us and he would conduct like the ceremony. And he said, I'm sorry, I can't bless this marriage because you've sinned, and so I will not perform the ceremony. And we're like, wow, we are horrible people. We can't even get married right. This is horrible. And so we found someone else that married us, but it was just this cloud of shame on my wedding day. I was 16 weeks pregnant, and I knew a lot of people knew, but no one talks about it. After we got married, I tried to go back to church. But it's like the elephant in the room. No one knows whether to say congratulations or I'm sorry. So then you're just alone. And I'm like a people person. I have a lot of friends. Everybody, I talk to everybody. Whoever will just walk past me, I'm going to talk to you. And so now it's like everybody kind of takes them all the way around. Everybody knows I'm pregnant, but no one's saying anything to me about it. And so then you're like, well, if they're not talking to me about it, then they're talking to themselves behind my back. And so I didn't like the way it made me feel when I went to church, so I quit going. And it was just a really lonely time. And I ended up getting married, and there's so many moms that the same type of situation happens, but they have no one. They don't have a spouse or even a boyfriend. The baby dad changes his numbers and he's gone, and they're just left completely alone. And I can't even imagine how hard it is for them, and the loneliness of that season. And so that kind of sparked my passion for just wanting the church to be more engaged in this issue, and that these single moms that are choosing life shouldn't feel alone. We are, if you're a believer, we're a family. We are a church family, we're a spiritual family, and they need to know what that feels like to be a part of a family. And so I I even ask a lot of girls to come to Embrace Grace. Like, if I'm always like on the radar. If I see someone that even halfway looks single and pregnant, I have gotten in trouble before because maybe they weren't pregnant. That's the worst. So if I can just tread carefully when you're leading into the conversation. I've gotten a lot better at it. But sometimes they don't have a ring on, but then that could sometimes be that their fingers are swollen or, whatever. But all you have to do, you can say a lot of things with a huge smile on your face and like a Southern Texas charm. And I know that doesn't work for all of you because you may not be from Texas, but California, I know, probably has charm too. So, and Reed for sure. Oh my gosh. So, but what I'm saying is it's about the delivery. So, just talking to them and, hey, how's it going? Do you have kids? Like, if it's questionable if they're pregnant, I'm always like, do you have kids? What's your life like? And usually they'll say, well, I have one in the way, or something like that. And then, oh, are you married? Or sometimes they'll be like, well, I have a baby, I have a boyfriend or whatever. So seeing where the conversation goes and then seeing how it can spark into a really awesome opportunity to speak life into someone that is super upset or depressed or scared. And God brought me so many people, and I'm going to tell you a few stories here in just a minute. But I know as a church, like I have invited a lot of girls and they're just like, you want me to go to church and like this situation? Like, no way, there's no way I'm going there. They're going to judge me. I hear horror stories. They're just like, they're going to tell me I'm going to hell. They're going to tell me how like I'm a horrible person. And it's so sad that this is what the unchurched think that church is. They think it's about behavior modification rather than a heart transformation. We're known more for what we're against than what we're for. Kind of like what you guys were saying this morning. Like, we have to be known more for what we're for than what we're against. And that's really what the church has done up to this point. It's we're against this, we're against this, we're against this. When really we're for people, we're for life. And it's really cool to see the change that's happening. And I just feel like it would be amazing and beautiful if the church was one of the first places a girl ran to instead of the last because of shame and guilt. And that it was just known as a safe place. Like, I can talk to someone at the church. I know that's going to be a safe place because I don't know what to do. And unfortunately, it's just not that. That's the last place they think they want to go to. But I can see a change happening. So even that guy that wouldn't marry us, 2 years later, he called my husband. Oh, by the way, so I'm married for 20 years now, and and so I married my baby daddy, and he's awesome. And then we had three other kids. I had a little boy, and we had 3 other kids, so 4 kids total. And that little boy, who now is 19 himself, he's in college. He's at Oral Roberts University in Tulsa, majoring in ministry and pastoral leadership. He has led so many people to the Lord. Like, he's on fire for God. And he said that Satan had a plan to take him out before he was ever even born. But he's going to use his life to change the world because he knows that God has him here, and he's going to use it to change the world, which I love it. He said he was an overcomer before he was ever even born. So whenever 2 years after that, we got married, that pastor that wouldn't marry us called Ryan out of the blue. And he said, Ryan, I feel like it was my worst mistake in pastoring history for not marrying you. I think about it every single day. Will you forgive me? And Ryan was like, yes, of course. Ryan loves this man. And he was like, yes, of course, I forgive you. And even now to this day, he is like Ryan's mentor. He's so amazing. And he has a church in Austin now. And he actually, 3 years ago, asked me to preach at his church on Mother's Day. And he was very open with his congregation. So I'm in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We're a few hours away. So he was super open with his congregation leading up to the date that I was coming to speak. And he told them what he had done years before. He was like, I had a religious heart, I had a Pharisee spirit, all this stuff. And he's like, I shouldn't have done it. And this is what I did. But then look at what Embrace Grace is doing and what has popped up. And so I came and did my thing and spoke. And then he said, Amy, will you come back on stage? And I was done. And there was still, everyone was out there. He said, Amy, will you come on stage and will you bring your son up there as well? And Jess was 16 at the time. And so we both come on stage. He's like, Amy, years ago I asked Ryan for forgiveness, but I never really asked you. Will you forgive me? I was like, yes, of course. Like, look at this ministry, of course. But then he looked at my son, 16 years old, in front of the whole congregation. And he said, will you forgive me for planting seeds in your heart before you were ever even born? I rejected you while you were in your mother's womb. Will you forgive me? And he says, yes, I forgive you, my son. And it was just amazing, like, you could feel church wounds being lifted in that room. Like, jaws were on the floor. Like, they could not believe, because in small towns, they're still making the girls come confess their sin in front of the entire church. And like, why is it that sin and not that the pastor just ate too much at the buffet? You know, like, it doesn't make any sense. Why do we pinpoint certain ones when we all mess up and we all sin? And so it was so humbling to see him do that. Like, it was just amazing and powerful. Like, we couldn't believe it. And that's kind of the shift that we're seeing in churches, that they are starting to want to be more involved in this movement and open their arms to these moms that need help. And so, you know, a little bit about where I'm coming from. I have an organization called Embrace Grace, and we help young women with unplanned pregnancies get connected to churches. And so we have church curriculum that's used all over the nation in a small group format. So they're meeting other girls that's going through the same thing that they are. And they're being discipled and loved on. They get a baby shower. A lot of times the free stuff could be a hook to get them in the door. But then Jesus does everything. Like, he's just amazing. He takes care of everything. And the fact they have someone to talk to, we feel like no single mom should ever walk alone. That we all need each other. And so it started in Dallas-Fort Worth area at just one church. Never in a million years did we think we would be a nonprofit, or, you know, it just wasn't even on our radar. And now, just 4 years later, we're in 490 churches, 47 states, and 8 countries. Yeah, really awesome. And lives are just being changed, and it's just amazing to watch what's happening. And then even for these moms, they are, you know, we always tell the leaders, like, we can't fix all their problems, but we can point them to the one that does. And we can help them make sure that they don't have to walk alone. And so it's really amazing to see. And the baby shower is always over the top. They get all their practical needs taken care of. I've seen where they've gotten cars. They're getting so much because it's just the church body rallying around these young women. And then the last of the semester is a Princess Day that's all about their value and their worth and how much God loves them so much. Because really, when they can understand their value and worth, that's when all the things they shouldn't be doing becomes things they don't want to do anymore, because they fall in love with Jesus. And then that completely changes their life. And so we want these women to understand how powerful they are, and then how with God they can do hard things. And we also have a Love Box initiative where we have these totally amazing love boxes. If you didn't see, you can see at the table outside where they have a onesie that says best gift ever. It has a journal about being brave. It has my book, which is it's not preachy, it's just 20 stories of preacher kids, date rape, birth moms, just drugs, every possible story you can imagine, and how when they chose life, how their life totally changed in the most amazing way, and they trusted God with it. And so we give them to pregnancy centers for free if they have an Embrace Grace within 30 miles of their center, because it's basically an invitation. We used to give pregnancy centers flyers to give to the girls, and the girls would just throw them in the floorboard of the car, and they wouldn't ever read it. And so we're like, what would they not throw away? I know the cutest gift in the whole wide world. And so we made these gifts, and they go out to all these pregnancy centers around the nation, and it's used as an invitation to go to a local church to be loved on. And it's so cool to watch. But what's happening is, when they're sitting in the pew, it's not a statistic anymore, it's a real girl. With a real story, and these people in the church are hearing their story. They're buying a gift maybe for the shower or whatever, and they're sitting next to her and hearing her story, and it changes you. Because you may have had perceptions and judgments against, you know, girls that get pregnant or whatever, and then you hear what they've been through in their story, and it's amazing. And then to see, like, grace displayed in such a extravagant way, it's amazing. And for the most part, churches are like, yes, let's do it, but we do sometimes have churches that are like, you know, this is a rewarding sin. And I'm sorry, I can't do that. Can't reward sin. When this is about loving people, and I always tell pastors, y'all don't want me preaching right now, but let me just tell you, just read the prodigal son, okay? Read that. Watch the party that he had after he was with prostitutes and everything, how the dad threw him a party, which is what God wants to do, and all he had to do was turn home, right? And what I love is he wasn't even all the way home. It says, and while he was a long way off, the father ran to him, and he threw him a huge party, and he was like, son, I'm so glad you're home. You were lost, and now you're found. And when a lot of these girls, they are a long way off, but they've turned. And that's all they have to do. And then the extravagant grace is just so amazing. And then even their parents, or if they even have parents, may come and they're like, oh my gosh, like, how is this church wrapping their arms around my daughter when I've been so angry at her and so mad at her situation? And then that I get to love her, and like that they're loving on her in this way, that I should be loving her in this way too. And so the church can be totally amazing when we're operating in unity. And we are the church. Like, we talk about these church buildings and pastors and things, but we are the church. Like, if you're a believer, we're the church. And so there's not American flags flying in heaven. There's not denominations flying in heaven. It's just one church and a kingdom, right? And so a lot of times we feel like this patriotism is like, this is God's country and blah, blah, blah. Like, no, this is God's world. These are his people. And he loves us so much. Like, and so it's just all about being together. The abortion rate is exactly the same inside the church as it is outside the church. There is no difference at all. And these girls are sitting in the pews next to you, and they're going to get abortions. And they might be scared to confide in you because of what you might say. And for CareNet did a study, they said 43% go to church once a month or more and have gotten an abortion during that time while they were going to church once a month or more. So they are going to, there's a breakdown here. Like that they don't feel like they can go to the church and talk to them. And I'm amazed too when I tell pastors about Embrace Grace, another thing they might say is, oh, we don't have pregnant girls at our church. Yeah, you do. You've got pregnant girls at your church. And say it's like, okay, say for instance, maybe there is like a church that has 100 people and it's like all senior citizens. And there's like no young people. And there are churches like that. Go get them. Go get the girls. This is outreach. Like, go find them. They're at the Facebook buy, sell, trade pages posted on there. I just found out I'm pregnant. I need a car seat. They're in the wake offices. They're at the pregnancy centers. Go get them and bring them to your church, or be the church to them outside the church. Whatever it is, we are the church. So go out there. And pastors have to change their mentality of what outreach is. And then you can have outreach in the pro-life movement, and they just think, oh, that's someone else's issue. That's someone else's problem. That doesn't pertain to us. We don't have pregnant people at our church. And that is not true. And we have to wake them up that it is an issue. And God's bringing his people all the time. Like, all the time. You know, like I said, if we're the church everywhere we go, God's bringing his people to talk to. I had a girl one time that she had found out she was pregnant, totally freaking out. She only had a dad. Her mom left when she was 2 weeks old, so she was raised just by a dad, and she never had siblings. And when he found out she was pregnant, he was so angry and so mad. And he said, you're going to be a horrible mom. You can get an abortion, or you can do adoption, but you're not having this baby. And so she was crying, and she even went to the pregnancy center, or the abortion clinic, and she saw people outside praying, so she just kept driving. And she just didn't know what to do, crying all the time. And she worked at a UPS store in our town. And so she pulled up into her spot, and she's like, God, I don't know what to do. If you could bring me someone that had a box that has the word church on the label, then I'll know that they're a safe person to talk to, because I literally have no one to talk to right now. And so she goes into her shift all day long. She was there 5 minutes before closing. Here comes a dude with a box that says church on the label. And she's like, oh my gosh, you work at a church. He's like, no, I work at a company that makes websites for churches. And she's like, oh. And he's like, well, I go to church. And she's like, you do? And then that was it. Like, she started bawling, telling him everything, the whole life story, what was going on. And I know this guy. He's the dad of 4 boys. He was just like, oh my gosh, I'm just here to ship my package. And he was like, okay, well, let me get your information. I think her church has something. I'll have my church or my wife contact you about getting that information, and let me just get your info. And he said some encouraging things to her, and then he left. Well, then she got plugged into our Embrace Grace group, and we were like 3 classes into it, so she was kind of the new girl. And so she's telling all the girls in the class about this UPS story. And so while she was sitting there, she said something under her breath that like completely changed my life forever. She said, you know, my dad thinks that I'll be a horrible mom, but that guy at the UPS store said he thought I would be a good mom. And I was like processing, what did she just say? A random stranger that she most likely will never meet again said something that he probably didn't even think twice about. Like, it wasn't any kind of eloquent whatever. It was just, I think you'll be a good mom. And that was literally all she had to hold on to. She had nothing left because not one person in her life believed that she would be. And she had her little boy. She is the best mom ever. She is amazing. She's done so awesome. And God's bringing us people all the time to talk to. And sometimes we're too busy to even take notice. Like the people that are in the dry cleaners, the grocery store. Like there's so much darkness in the world, and we are the light. We are Jesus with hands and feet. Like wherever we go, we're supposed to represent him. And we get too busy to even notice or look someone in the eye that is we're interacting with. There was one girl, one time I went to Sonic. Do y'all have Sonics here in California? Okay. So at Sonic, and I don't know if it's changed because I haven't been in a while, but like you can pay with a credit card, but you can't tip with a credit card. You have to tip like with cash. So you always have to have cash. And we've had Embrace Grace girls work at Sonic, and they're like, people don't tip, and they brag about it. So I'm always like super paranoid. When one day I thought for sure I had cash in my wallet. It was happy hour with kids, slushies. I was going to get them all. And so I get there, and it was a little cute girl, and I was about to pay, and I realized the cash is not there. So it's like, oh my goodness. So I told her I had to pay with credit card. I said, I'm so sorry. I thought I had cash, but I don't. And so I'm going to go to the ATM machine and go get some cash for a tip, and I'll come back and bring it to you. And she's like, oh, you don't have to do that, but if you want to, you can. So I go, and then I come back, and I bring it to her, and I was like, what's your name? She said, my name's Zoe. And I was like, oh my gosh, I love that name. That is like one of my favorite names in the whole wide world. And when I had my fourth one was a boy named Judah, and when I was pregnant with him, and if I thought it was going to be a girl, that was the girl name I had picked out. Did you know that your name means life? But not like just any kind of a life, but like a heavenly realm of life. Like a John 10:10, John 3:16, like whoa, like not survival, but like amazing life. Did you know that? And she was like, no. Totally freaked her out. But then she said, so you have a kid, you've got a baby? And I was like, yeah, he's one, he's a little bit of a big baby. And she said, I just found out I'm pregnant. Do you have any tips for me? And I'm a little nervous. I'm like, really, God? Are you serious right now? So I get to talk to her, and we start to become friends. She came to Embrace Grace, did the whole thing. I was at her birth. I was at her wedding. Her husband worked for my husband. Like, I got to do life with this girl named Zoe that is so amazing and such a blessing to me. And her life totally changed going through Embrace Grace and having the surrounding spiritual family. And God bringing us those people all the time, and there's life and death in the power of the tongue. I remember one time there was a pastor that told me in Dallas that he had a daughter that had an unplanned pregnancy, and she had kind of ran away from him and everything. When she found out she was pregnant, she came back home, and she said, Dad, I really want to dedicate my baby at your church. And he said, yes, you can. So and the dad was like in jail, the baby dad. He was in jail, like she was totally on her own. So the way they do it at this church is they'll have like one family, and then another family, and another family, and they do like 5 families at a time on a dedication Sunday. And they'll say, is there anyone here that represents this family or baby? Will you please stand? And people stand, and then they pray a prayer over that one, and they do the next one, the next one, the next one. Well, then they get to his daughter and her baby, and she was just kind of there by herself because he was like facilitating it. And he said, is there anyone here that represents this woman and her child? And something amazing happened. The whole church stood up. That is what the church is supposed to do. Because we are a family, and it's messy. We mess up all the time, but we don't kick our own wounded. We pick each other up when we fall and say, we're with you. We're going to figure this out together. Like, it's going to be okay. We need spiritual moms and dads that will teach and love each other. Teach this younger generation. They need help. Like, a lot of them don't have parents, and if they do, they haven't been parented. And so they need a spiritual family to come alongside them. And even I really believe, I know, because it's in Scripture, that it's His kindness that leads us to repentance. It's His love that woos people to Him. And a lot of times, like, sometimes if He wants to get a girl's attention, He might just use a baby to do it. He might just give them the sweetest face that they've ever laid eyes on, so they can finally get a tiny glimpse of how much He loves them so much. Because I've heard so many times of these Embrace Grace girls, I was about to commit suicide. I was about to be in jail. I have a drug problem, all this stuff. And then I got pregnant. And then I didn't even, I know there's still some situations where people still do drugs, but I can't tell you how many girls have come through our program and said, I don't know what happened. I didn't even know I was pregnant, but I just all of a sudden didn't want to do drugs anymore. It just sounded gross. But when it really come to find out later, they were pregnant. And so also, the last thing I want to say is abortion healing in churches is so important. So important. And God, lately I have been thinking about it so much, in fact, of becoming obsessed, just thinking about it so much. And I spoke at an event in Dallas last summer, and it was a big arena of 10,000 women. at the Fort Worth Convention Center, and I was being interviewed by someone for about a 15-minute interview about Embrace Grace and how it all started, because the dream actually happened at that conference 10 years before. And so I did my thing, and she's like, okay, Amy, thank you so much for being here. We're so proud of you, blah, blah, blah. And I said, wait, hang on, I want to say one more thing. I said, I just want to say really quick, there's 10,000 women in this arena, and at least 3,000 of you probably have experienced an abortion. And I just want to say that God wants to heal your heart this weekend, and He loves you so much. You're not disqualified for ministry. You're not disqualified from your calling. You can share your story. We overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. So get out there and tell your story and let God heal your heart. That was it. Like, super quick, done. That was all. Okay, at our booth afterwards, I kid you not, hundreds of women bawling. I remember one lady had a lady on each side of her, and they were like literally holding her up, like her body was like buckling, and she was bawling, and she said, you mean to tell me that God can use me after what I did, that I'm not disqualified, like I can do this? Like it was like blowing her mind, like she couldn't even believe. And to see the shame lifted off of 3,000 women, if pastors don't have to do a whole sermon on abortion and it's wrong, and they don't want to do it, but they could at least say something simple like that, and we have a healing for you. Because can you imagine, the church would be completely unleashed of women that are going to be confident in their calling, that to share their story, bring all that stuff that they stuffed down for so long, bringing it out into the light, and then going out and changing the world with their story. Because free people. So once they are free themselves, then they go out and free someone else, and they get to talk to these girls that are hurting and broken. Like, I can't tell you how many people say, if I had Embrace Grace or a Love Box or something like this 15 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever it is, my life would look totally different right now. If my pastor would have if I had just known it was a safe place, then it would look totally different right now. But I just can only imagine how when all of these believers all around the world that are suppressing, men and women suppressing hurt and shame in their heart because of the past abortion, when we can lift that shame and bring it into the light, we could change everything. Like, we look so much to pastors need to get behind it and blah, 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 and the whole movement. It starts with us. It's going to take a grassroots movement. We go from the bottom up and the top down. Like, we can do this. We just have to talk about it with each other, our friends. We can create a Me Too movement within the pro-life movement if we could just start bringing it out into the light, and it will be amazing. That's how we can bring down the whole pro-choice, abortion, all of that. That's how we can eradicate it, because we can make it unthinkable because of the stories that are out there and the freedom that other women have gone through, because they're able to say, don't do it, because this is what happened to me, and I'll walk alongside you. I'll be that person that I never had when I was young, and I'm going to be there with you, and it will change everything. So, I don't know, there was so much more I was going to say, but I'll just stop there. You guys are amazing. Thanks.